Part 24. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 231. Marcus Breno was very depressed. He is a night watchman of the Church of the Lord of Glory. A so-called night watchman means walking in the darkness and handling some matters for the church that are inconvenient to deal with in an open and honest manner. For example, kill a less pious lord, secretly search a noble's house for magic items, monitor a big businessman who traffics in contraband. Of course, who is a serious person to be a night watchman, except for those members of the tribunal who are too religious and have burned their brains, or have special hobbies. Most of the night watchmen are recruited through various strange channels. For example, Marcus Breno himself was the half-grown boy who was found inside a den of thieves when the Inquisition wiped out, a group of thieves. With such a background, it is not easy to get any good treatment. For example, this time, he was sent to the pagan kingdom across the sea, the headquarters of the evil devils, to explore the secret of the dragon's breath technique. How could a little magician with only level 1 be able to use the dragon breath technique? Did he get some ancient artifact, or was he blessed by the dragon clan, or did he get a dragon nest? The instructions from the top officials of the Inquisition are, find this secret, and if possible, bring the treasure back. So he was sent here. More than half a year after that war, I started with one picture and the rest was on my own. Just outrageous. He knew that it was very, very difficult to find an unknown first-level mage in a small rural place like that. The problem is, after half a year of work, how can you not even figure out the name? And his ship sank. Sinking. All supplies and manpower are gone, and I can only work as a boy in the stronghold in the city, have to cover my identity and have to support myself. To make matters worse, when he was desperately escaping from the ship, he was hit. That black energy is still condensed on his right leg, causing him no peace of mind every day and night. Marcus Breno pulled off a towel, bit it tightly, and poured holy water on the burned area on his thigh. His body was shaking violently, veins popped up one by one on his neck, and large beads of sweat rolled down his arms and thighs. There was a sizzling sound where the holy water fell. A puff of black smoke quickly rose up, swallowing up the golden light flowing in the holy water. The black air on the legs seemed to have faded a bit, but seemed to remain unchanged. However, the burns and blisters on the thighs showed no signs of healing at all. The boss stretched his head to watch together attentively. It wasn't until he saw the last bit of golden light disappearing and there was no movement anymore that he exhaled a breath, only to realize that his lungs were already aching from holding it back. He patted Marcus on the shoulder sympathetically and lowered his voice. You should have a good rest these days. I'll go out and find out where Gretel Nordmark lives and where it's more convenient to start. Once everything is ready, you can take action. Well. Marcus Breno wanted to struggle, but he was doused with holy water, causing severe pain in his legs and collapse. He used his last strength to pull out the towel and lay back. Thank you for your hard work. All for the Lord of Glory? All for the Lord of Glory? Senior spies with 20 years of experience and operatives assigned temporarily prayed together. The boss went out the next day to find out the news. He has been undercover in Nevis for 20 years. Even if he just opened a shop quietly, he still accumulated a lot of contacts. After asking around, I actually got a lot of clues. Gret Nordmark. He cured my gout. From the fish boss I knew well on the dock. Gret Nordmark. This name sounds familiar. Let me think about it. By the way, he published an article in Arcane, in the issue at the beginning of the year. From someone who is too lazy to cook. The store has been eating magicians for 7 or 8 years. Gret Nordmark. You went to Thunder Point. Where are you working? Isn't that nonsense? It must be the top of the mountain. Hey, why are you asking about him? Assistant teacher from Bridge Magic Academy. Not only did he ask people, but the boss also mobilized other secret agents buried by the church who had contact with him to find out about Greet's whereabouts in various ways. For example, a small vendor selling fried fish, grilled squid and other snacks squatted near the train station and watched to see when Gretel would come down the mountain. Gretel didn't know all this. He walked peacefully on the campus in the early morning, taking advantage of the 1 or 2 hours left before leaving for the meeting, and tried to walk around as much as possible. Hey, there are some green moldy spots under this tree. They don't look like moss. So scoop them up and take them away. There are patches of mildew that are neither green nor blue under that wall. Scrape them down and take them away. On the desk over there. Sir. This, sir. How many slices of blue cheese do you want? I miscalculated. The blue thing is cheese, not penicillium. No, wait, it seems that the blue color in blue cheese is also caused by a certain kind of penicillium, but the content of penicillin is very small. When he saw Bagua in his previous life, his views were shattered. Gretel immediately took out his wallet. Give me £1. No, £2. Gretel, haven't you finished eating yet? Someone suddenly called him from behind. Gretel turned around and saw several classmates from yesterday's party coming together. Anthony Valentine, who had entered the Thunder Corner like him, waved from a distance, with a smile as bright as his blonde hair. Eat quickly, eat quickly. Let's go together after eating, let's go get a good seat. I heard that a legendary master is coming today. 7 or 8 people rushed up. Greet quickly stuffed the cheese into the space bag, turned around and walked between them. Anthony immediately pushed him into it. Come on, let's go together. Where did you go so early in the morning? By the way, is your instructor here? No. Then come with us, or you won't be able to get in. Hey, there was a lot of chaos yesterday, and I didn't hear anything. What did you say you were doing recently? Gretel looked around. Among this group of people, there are 5 who stay at the peak to work, 1 from the plasticity department, 1 from the illusion department, 1 from the transformation department, 1 from the protection department, and 1 from the conjuration department. They were among the first batch to get offers. Although they could only work in the sub-towers of each department, they were already considered to be exceptionally good. But at this moment, these outstanding students were lined up on both sides, surrounded by a buddy who was only hired in the second batch because of his mediocre grades. Without him, the guy stayed in school as a teaching assistant. At this moment, this person was in high spirits and a little sneaky, leading them to the side door of the auditorium. Come on, follow me this way, the staff passage. Let me tell you, it's very difficult to get tickets for this annual meeting. Except for those who came by taking advantage of the instructor's invitation letter, you don't have it, other people can't get it at all. I can't get in. I can get in the afternoon and evening, but the legendary master has left again. We teaching assistants are pretty good, and we all help inside and outside the venue. When the show starts, it's no problem to stand closer and listen. Just follow me and don't run around. Thanks at I don't know 0678 for the 100 starting coins rewarded. Today I will update 4,000 words, 2,000 words at noon, 2,000 words at night. In the afternoon, I went to watch the dance drama The Eternal Wave. Occasionally, I have to recharge my brain. I also have to do extra work and will continue tomorrow. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 232. The teaching assistant classmate was gesticulating and talking like a blah blah, speaking very fast, leaving no room for others to interrupt. As they talked, 2 or 3 of the students slowed down. Anthony Valentine looked embarrassed and looked around. This, that, I brought the instructor's invitation. His steps slowed, and Miles also stood up. Over the past 6 months, he has grown a bit taller, but has not yet reached the average height. He took a step toward the front door, and then took another step. Senior brother promised to take me in. The teaching assistant classmate choked. He looked left and right, and saw that there were more than 2 people planning to leave the team. His shoulders slumped. Okay, okay. Those of you who have invitations, and those who are brought in, go to the main entrance. Those of you who are not brought in, come with me. Everyone parted ways. Gretel remained silent and slowly followed the 2 people in front of him towards the main entrance of the auditorium. The auditorium of Bridge Magic Academy is called Sage Hall. The name sounds gentle and elegant, but the appearance really belies the name. Looking from a distance, the entire auditorium looks like a ferocious black dragon lying on the ground. Directly above the doorway, the triangular eaves stick out high, and 6 diagonal columns are supported on the outside of the eaves, like the sharp teeth of a black dragon, ready to be closed and chewed at any time. The inner passage is deep and long, not to mention dark. As soon as one walks in, it is like walking directly into the dragon's mouth. Greet stopped and watched. The side hall of the auditorium is symmetrical on both sides and covered with a wavy roof with sharp edges and corners, really like a pair of spread dragon wings. On the tower with simulated thorns on its back, someone was looking down and pointing. What's even more terrifying is that there is a real dragon head inlaid above the main entrance. Just looking at it makes you feel chilly. On the outer edge of the dragon's teeth, there are 30 or 40 magicians scattered in clusters, constantly separated and gathered and separated again. Some are walking back and forth, some are looking up and down, some are whispering. Greet walked from the edge of the auditorium to the main entrance and saw 3 young mages. They were waved out of the crowd by the passing archmage and led into the auditorium. 10 steps away from the main door, Anthony Valentine took out the invitation and silently held it in his hand. Miles looked around as he walked. Why hasn't senior brother come yet? Why hasn't senior brother come yet? Hey, this senior dash. He immediately stood up straight and adjusted his posture. Beside him, Anthony also stopped and bowed his head in salute. Senior. Aurora Warden screeched to a halt in front of them. On the left chest, the badges representing 3rd-level arcanists and 5th-level magicians shine brightly. He looked blankly at the 2 young magicians, and then at Gretel, who was walking alongside them and seemed to have a good relationship. This. Gretel didn't know how to explain it either. From yesterday's party to now, he was really embarrassed to show off in front of a group of classmates who had to be brought in by their teachers, or even pretended to be staff members. I've been trying hard to hide the past, but it's only now that I've revealed my true form. Ahem, Oro, let's go, Greet shouted bravely. Aurora agreed hurriedly and walked to his side in a hurry. Gretel turned his head in embarrassment and opened his mouth. What to say? What to say now? He said that I came in with my own invitation. Can I still bring people with my invitation? It seems too Versailles. He couldn't find his tongue for a moment. But Miles suddenly realized it and said, Ah, Gretel, your senior brother is here too. Let's go, let's start soon. The classmates each verified the invitation and filed in. Anthony breathed a sigh of relief as soon as he entered the hall. It's okay, not many people are here. I asked about it yesterday. Those with formal invitations have fixed seats, and people in the back can sit wherever they want. We can go a little further forward, well, it will be about 10 rows away. Now, Gretel. Without holding him back, Greet continued to walk forward leisurely, passing the low-level mages 10 rows back, the mid-level mages in the 7th, 8th, 5th, and 6th rows, and 10 levels ahead. The above great magician, and then a somewhat familiar young magician, seemingly an assistant teacher, quickly stepped forward to greet him. After checking the invitation in Greet's hand, he led him to sit in the first row. Hey, how did he dash? Anthony was stunned. Wizard Warden sat down next to him naturally and crossed his legs. What the boss got is a formal invitation letter. Arcane is always sent to the author of that year, didn't you know? I only know that he published a paper. Several classmates looked at each other. The magicians from behind entered the hall one after another, calling their friends and finding their seats. At 5 minutes to 9 o'clock, the door to the inner hall opened with a bang. A group of high-level magicians with levels 14, 15, and 16 stepped out of the inner hall and took their seats one by one. Why is Greet still sitting in the front row? Anthony was so anxious. Even if you get a formal invitation, you should be a little more low-key. Didn't you see so many high-level mages behind you? Each issue of Arcana will publish 3 papers and more than a dozen newsletters. According to custom, the authors of the papers sit in the front and the newsletter writers sit in the back. Master Warden leisurely explained for his boss. The boss is handing out papers, so I must sit in the first row. Wait, why did you call him boss? Ahahaha, that's another story. Gretel, who was sitting in the first row, actually wanted to escape. Who told him who reserved the seat and why there was a necromancer sitting next to him? Gretel Nordmark. The other party's eyes lit up when he saw the badge on his chest. There is no way, the author who published an article in Arcane this year is the only mage below level 5, and he is the only one who can recognize it with his eyes closed. Hello, I'm Bram McCarty, I've known you for a long time. Hey, how is your microscope-related project going? I have a friend who is from the Plague Branch, and he was talking about you yesterday. Why did you come to the venue to collect debt? Greet looked at those twinkling eyes and instinctively shrank. Not even close. In fact, it has already been completed. I just don't solve the problem yet and then defraud some funds for penicillin. Now being pressed by the real owner, Gretel felt a little guilty and his eyes were wandering. The other party has already asked hurriedly. What else are you missing? Do you want help? If you want help, please tell me. It's our Black Crow Swamp project anyway. If you need anything, just ask. Gretel blinked, feeling a little moved. A high-level necromancer must have better connections and ability to obtain resources than him. Do you want to ask this person for some penicillium? Or other mold? Before he could make up his mind, the seat suddenly rose up, pushing him to stand up. The necromancer clapped his hands and waved away the skeleton under Gretel's chair. Stop chatting now, go up and receive the award. It's your turn. The dance drama The Eternal Wave is so beautiful, I cried while watching it. I didn't expect that just music, lighting, and body language can have such expressive power. I will work harder from tomorrow on. I need to write better and present a more refined and real world to everyone. Although I am not as aggressive as the big guys, I still have to pursue it. Please subscribe, please give me monthly tickets, please recommend votes, please give book reviews. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 233. Greet walked along the red carpet in the center of the auditorium and stepped onto the podium step by step. There was no one on the stage. The host smiled at him in front of the podium on the side, and the great magician sat under the stage and applauded gently. Gretel glanced at his chair in his busy schedule, and saw a skeleton sitting on the seat. He raised his 2 bone hands solemnly, and clicked, click, 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 click. What does this mean? If you don't complete the task quickly, do you think I will be the same as it? Also, it was agreed that it would be an award ceremony, but where is the big guy who will present the award to me? He took 2 more steps up, his steps getting slower and slower. Hello. Already 2 steps up the podium. 3 steps to go. If you go any further, you will cross the center line. Who will give the award to whom then? At this moment, a thunderbolt exploded in the sky. Gretel almost jumped back. The dazzling white flash occupied the entire field of vision. Even if he closed his eyes immediately, his retinas were still black and white, flashing randomly. Greet closed his eyes hard and forced the tears that had welled up from his eyes out. When he opened his eyes again, a portal made of thunder had been erected in front of him. Snow-white lightning respectfully separated to both sides, and a polished black leather shoe was slowly stepping across the door. There was a sound of chair legs scraping the floor from behind. The magicians stood up neatly, stood in awe, bowed their heads and saluted. "Welcome to your arrival, Your Majesty the Lord of Thunder." Greet quickly followed and lowered his head. Before lowering his head, he took a quick glance and saw the whole person. The magician looked very young and handsome, with black hair neatly combed back. The shirt is white, the tie is neat, and the black three-piece suit is meticulous, and it doesn't feel out of place even in the previous life. The only thing that showed his extraordinary identity was the monocle on the bridge of his nose. Electricity was flowing through the lenses, making small explosions continuously. Can you see clearly if half of your field of vision is blocked like this? Greet was really curious. The visitor had already walked up to him, turned slightly, and stood facing the audience. The thunder door behind him closed inward and disappeared without a trace. The host immediately said loudly, "Now, we welcome His Excellency the Lord of Thunder and present this year's Emerging Magician Award to the winners." Applause surged again. The legendary mage glanced at Gretel, raised his hand to push his monocle, and began to speak. According to the decision of the jury, the winner of this year's Emerging Magician Award is Gretel Nordmark. Although he is only a second-level magician, he has achieved important results in the field of research, curbed a potential plague for the Parliament, and protected the lives and health of many magicians. In recognition of these contributions, Congress hereby presents annual awards. Gretel Nordmark. Greet quickly stepped forward and stood at an angle that was convenient for the boss to see, but did not block the boss's view of the stage. He raised his head slightly and saw that the Lord of Thunder was looking straight ahead. The focus did not fall on him, nor did it look like it was on the stage. Instead, it was slightly tilted to one side of the monocle, as if he was staring at a certain plane in the void. While he was curious, the Lord of Thunder raised his hand and pushed up his monocle again. Greet followed his hand and saw countless tiny blue dots appearing on the lenses, arranged in parallel rows, like words. The blue dot disappeared in a flash, and the Lord of Thunder kept staring into the void and continued to speak. "I hope you will maintain your past research spirit, continue to work hard, and make greater results. May we meet on top of the mystery." This paragraph was spoken in a flat tone, with no cadence at all. It can be seen that he rarely speaks as a leader. "Boss, you didn't just follow the reading, did you? That monocle is actually for projecting your speech text, right? May we meet above the mystery?" Gretel quickly repeated. When he raised his head again, the boss's eyes finally focused on him. The monocle was also clean. There were no lightning bolts or blue dots. It was clear and transparent, as if it was just an ordinary lens. "You are very good." The Lord of Thunder, the legendary mage Dickel, moved the corner of his mouth and raised a smile. Stretching out his right hand, an assistant teacher immediately walked up to the right side of the rostrum. Holding a ruler disc in both hands, he bowed slightly and held the plate in front of the legendary mage. "Yo! Is this my prize coming?" Gretel couldn't help but look at the plate. In the center of the disc, there lay a long box of pure black color. The lid of the box was inlaid with a row of colorful gems, vaguely shaped like a constellation. The Lord of Thunder stretched out his hand and pressed on the lid of the box, and a bolt of lightning bounced up and passed over several gems on the lid. The long box opens silently. Lying on the deep black velvet lining is a quill, all golden and red, like the feathers of the legendary phoenix. The Lord of Thunder picked up his quill, lowered his head and scanned it, and his monocle flashed again. "Leave your mark," he handed it to Greet crisply. Greet took it with both hands respectfully. It felt hard and slightly cool to the touch. After taking a closer look, it turned out that the whole body was made of metal. Taking another breath, each feather quivered slightly, just like the real feathers on a bird. "I don't know how this was done," Gretel squeezed hard. "There is a bit of unevenness under the fingertips. Turn it over and look at it." There is a line of small words engraved on the center feather shaft. 1183, Emerging Magician Award, to Gretel Nordmark. This carving craftsmanship is almost as good as micro-carving. Gretel sighed secretly, and followed the instructions of the legendary mage to penetrate into his spiritual power and leave a mark. When the mental power comes into contact, the information about the quill pen suddenly unfolds in my mind line by line. Endless ink pen, a level 9 magic item, 1 layer of seal. It requires mental power to reach level 7 to unlock the seal and exert its full power. Thinking gives people wisdom and prevents us from getting lost in a strange world. Holding, or wearing, this quill, you will be immune to attacks by magic of level 5 and below, illusions, and soul control. This ink pen contains powerful magical powers. When it is no more than 1 foot away from you, it will maintain a constant mage armor on you. When the armor is broken, the force field shield will be automatically triggered. You can cast teleportation once a day, and the teleportation location is fixed. Level 7 and above can specify the teleportation location by yourself. This ink pen has a diamond set near the nib. If you insert the nib into an ink bottle, the diamond will absorb the entire bottle of ink and turn black. Therefore, until the diamond returns to transparency, you can always use it to write without worrying about the ink running out. Young magician, if you really want to keep this in your pocket, remember to add a cap. In addition, due to its shape, you can also use it as a material for feather fall. Don't worry, just feather fall cannot damage it. This is really something to save my life: control release, protection, teleportation, feather fall, but there are no attack spells. Gretel wanted to laugh a little. He held the quill and bowed deeply. "Thank you so much, Your Excellency. These features are exactly what I want. Who wants to fight and kill? If there are spies who want to deal with me, just go back and find the boss decisively. Also, the endless ink function is so thoughtful. This quill looks beautiful too. Gold and red. You can tell the difference from an ordinary quill pen at a glance. I no longer have to worry about others taking it away, inserting it into my pocket, and then drifting away to who knows where." Snort. The Lord of Thunder turned his eyes away in disgust. "I don't know what's wrong with this little guy. He doesn't want a ring, he doesn't want a bracelet, he doesn't want a bracelet, he doesn't want a watch, and it's best not to want a necklace. These are the most common styles of magic equipment." He was so picky and excluded them all. None of the ready-made templates can be used. During the previous communication, the alchemist master in charge of making the prizes was glaring and banged the table several times to indicate that he would not take the job. Pick and choose. What qualifications does a 4th level arcanist have to be picky? He actually put it in his pocket. The chest of that single-breasted windbreaker actually had a specially made pocket, so ugly. Don't think you can run around with this. Before you were level 7, the constant teleportation spell on this could only teleport within 100 kilometers, and the destination was close to the outer edge of the mystery lock on the top of the mountain. If you run too far, you can't pull back. No one can save you. Yes, Your Excellency. Don't worry, I won't run around. Gretel happily took the prize and went down. By the way, that box is also his. Although the identification technique shows that it has no special function and is just a box with a magic lock, it can't stand up to its beauty. Also inlaid with various gemstones. Even if it can't be used to release magic, it is at least very valuable. So tired. I only wrote 2,600 words, and I couldn't fit in the next big plot, so I had to put it in the evening, at least 3,400 words in the evening. I must have written enough for 6,000 today. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 234. The Arcane Annual Academic Conference and the annual Young Magician Awards ceremony lasted for 3 days in total. The morning of the first day was the opening ceremony, award ceremony, and academic lecture by the legendary master. The afternoon of the first day, the second and third days were academic discussions by school and field. The afternoon of the third day was the closing lecture and dinner. Most of the high-level magicians give lectures or host discussions. People like Greet just wander around the venue and listen to topics of interest. It's busy inside and it's busy outside. In the past 3 days, news related to Greet was collected one by one to the restaurant at the back entrance of the college, and then passed to the action personnel by the restaurant owner. Gret Nordmark joined Thunder Point, but has not been to the peak in the past month. Gret Nordmark often traveled to Clark's Peak some time ago. It seems that he has been in the dwarf area. Every time I come down from the dwarf area, I follow a convoy carrying goods. There are at least 2 dwarves in the team, a group of escorting cavalry, the leader is a 5th level knight, and his barbarian entourage. Almost never goes shopping. No, in the past 6 months, no one of our informants in the city has seen him go shopping. I found his laboratory. It can't be wrong. His name is still hanging on the wall of that laboratory. The location of that laboratory is very remote. Someone is delivering supplies. They have been delivering supplies every day for the past 2 months. The delivery person said that except for Gretel and his barbarian entourage, he saw no one else. The boss squatted under the dim oil lamp and dug out information one by one from shells, firewood, shiny dirty money bags, and other strange places, and shared it with the young man. Marcus Breno hugged his injured leg, huddled in the woodshed and looked at the map of Neva City, his eyes so bright that they were about to burn. You definitely don't have to think about the summit. It's a place where great magicians gather. People like me will die as many as they go. The forging area is not good either. It's too difficult to get things out of the dwarves. It's impossible to intercept them halfway. I was injured, and I don't have the authority to mobilize other people this time. Such a team of people can't handle it. Now it seems that I can only go to that laboratory. Help me check the situation inside again. How many people are there, and when were? The boss answered skillfully, there are also the layout of the laboratory, defensive measures, surrounding environment, patrol situation, where to retreat. Don't worry, I know it all. What else do you need? I'll have someone check it out together. Let's wait until this batch of news comes back. Marcus Breno pressed his thigh, and another trace of pain flashed across his face. The boss looked down at him. Can you still hold on? Do you want me to find a way to buy a bottle of healing potion? I still have this connection. You want me to accept the evil god's grace? Marcus suddenly raised his head and stared at him with a look of shock on his face. The boss pressed his head with a headache. But a healing potion is a healing potion. It doesn't matter which one it comes from, it can be used to heal any injury or illness. Jose, you are crazy. Only my lord is the only god. You have been in the land of the pagans for 20 years. You have fallen and your faith has been polluted. I'm doing this for your own good. Your injury is much more serious than the past few days. If you don't get treatment, you won't be able to make it back even if the operation is over. You don't have to worry about it. The boss walked away. In the darkness, Marcus Breno held the dagger and lowered his head silently. The next day, in the woodshed of the magician's house, there was a little boy huddled in the corner of the woodpile, his whole body burning hot. Marcus Breno hung around the lab for 2 days. Dress up as a beggar, a hawker, a tourist, a student, and observe from far and near, from all directions. The laboratory is on the outskirts of the city, and one step outside is the wilderness. But even in such a remote location, there is a group of guards patrolling there at least every hour. The patrol density is smaller at night, but even so, you will definitely come here every 2 or 3 hours. For 2 days, the door of the laboratory was only opened once in the morning, and the barbarians dragged in a basket full of supplies and threw out an empty basket. He didn't go out during the day or at night. Through the wall, Marcus could hear hum, ha, hey, bang and various sounds of fists and beatings inside, which could be heard from early in the morning to evening. This barbarian is really in good spirits. Fortunately, barbarians are more energetic during the day. Although the walls of this laboratory are high and there are sharp iron spears on the top, they cannot stop Marcus. He walked around a few times, climbed up a tree, caught 2 birds, picked them up with all his strength, and threw them over the wall. There was silence on the wall, no reaction. The 2 sparrows chirped, flapped their wings in panic, and flew up again. Marcus smiled slightly, grabbed another wildcat, picked up the skin by its neck and threw it upwards. Meow dash. A shrill scream. After a while, the large iron door of the laboratory opened a crack, and the barbarian stretched out an arm and threw the wildcat out of the door. Except for a little dirty fur and a few extra blades of grass stuck to its paws, the tortoise-shell wildcat was unscathed and kept meowing and cursing. Good luck. There are no magic alarms set on the walls of this laboratory, or at least no magic alarms for small animals. Marcus made up his mind. He found a hotel and took a shower. He carefully cleaned away the fishy smell, sour smell, and various unpleasant odors from his body, and put on a pair of light and soft dark clothes. Taking advantage of the cold rain at night, he climbed up the wall silently and crossed the iron spear with a soft somersault. Still no sirens sounded. The young thief listened carefully, and there was a rising and falling sound on his right-hand side, like a bellows, but it was the barbarian follower who was sleeping soundly. Marcus carefully touched the left-hand side. Not far away, a foul smell came out. According to the information I obtained before, this laboratory has raised many animals, especially rabbits, and someone even delivered feed a few days ago. So, what I smell can't be rabbit shit, right? Marcus quickly walked around the wall. This building covers a large area, but it has no defense, and even several shutters are open. Marcus lay on the window lattice and looked hard, pressing his face until every edge was marked. He finally saw the cages, troughs, and buckets inside. It was indeed just a house for raising animals. Going around again, let alone treasures, there isn't even half a box in the house. It seemed that even if there was a mission target, it would not be here. Marcus quietly stepped away and walked towards another house. When I arrived at the door, I saw a bright yellow triangular sign embedded in the wall next to the door. In the logo, 3 outward-facing black crescents form a triangle, with a black ring surrounding the separation of the crescents, as if to bind them together. Marcus Breno didn't know what material the logo was made of, why it glowed in the dark, let alone what the logo meant. However, after just one glance, he felt an inexplicable sense of danger and alert, and couldn't help but take a step back. After exiting the step, he saw 2 lines of blood-red characters written next to the triangle sign. Danger. Stay out. Found the right one. Marcus Breno relaxed slightly. The more heavily guarded the place, the more rewarding it will be. As for danger, how can it not be dangerous to perform a mission? In other words, How can there be no danger in the magician's world? He circled around on tiptoe. Compared with the breeding farm next door, the security of this house was too tight. Marcus turned around and didn't even see half of the windows. Not only were there no windows, but there were no side doors, ventilation holes, or water outlets. I wonder if the owner wanted to suffocate himself to death. The only entrance seemed to be the door at the danger sign, where the savage snored loudly. Marcus assessed his fighting ability. If he was not injured, he would not be afraid of a head-on fight with a barbarian, but he had no choice but to receive a blow on his right leg. The black energy penetrated into his bones and did not get better in 2 months, forcing his strength to the 7th level for the first time. At this moment, he wanted to break open the door and kill the barbarians in a sneak attack without alerting the outside. Marcus was really unsure. Fortunately, there are other plans. Marcus held his breath and walked quietly to the other end of the long house, which was the end away from the entrance. Holding the dagger tightly with one hand, the other hand reached into his arms and took out a black and gray amulet. Then, the man and his weapons twisted in the darkness and disappeared quietly. Shadow jump. Use the power of the shadow realm to transcend physical barriers and jump right into the heart of your defenses. There was a flash of flowers in front of my eyes, and then it was bright and clear. Marcus Breno was so dazzled that he couldn't even open his eyes. He reflexively grasped the dagger and swung it forward. The sharp blade cut through the wind. The sound was sharp, but other than that there was no movement at all. No one? Regardless of whether there was anyone or not, years of training made him swoop down and curl up in a ball. After touching the ground, he opened his eyes and saw that he was huddled under a table, with a strange-shaped white lamp on the opposite side, and the light was shining directly on his face. I stood up and looked around, but there was nothing in the room except the big table that could sleep on. There was not even a stool to be found. Greet said that there is no anesthesiologist, so why do we need a stool in the operating room? Although the room was empty, Marcus still felt particularly familiar as he looked around. He sniffed and looked carefully, and sure enough, he smelled the smell of blood floating in the air. It was so light that if he hadn't gone through special training, he would hardly be able to detect it. He walked forward following the smell of blood, and smelled the rotten smell mixed with blood on the stone table. It was also extremely slight, suppressed by a cold, sharp, and unfamiliar smell that drifted into the room, causing a shiver down his spine. Here, this laboratory is really a dangerous place. Marcus took a breath of cold breath. His heart was beating wildly, but his whole body became excited instead. Danger means that he has found the right thing. The question now is, where is that secret, or those treasures? He moved forward step by step according to his memory. After passing the big white light, he pushed open another door marked danger. Do not enter, and entered a dark room with 4 walls. Listening carefully, the barbarian snoring could not be heard here at all. Marcus took out a silver rod and gently pulled off the outer sleeve. In an instant, the light from the silver rod reflected in the room, illuminating Marcus's surprised eyes. Full of beautiful things. Marcus' first reaction was that he had walked into some treasure house. After taking a closer look, I couldn't help but be disappointed. The 4 walls of the room and the shelves against the walls were filled with rows of round glass dishes. The shining lights I saw before were all glass dishes, glass bottles, glass tubes, glass. Each glass vessel contained something: red, translucent, yellow, white, green. There were handwritten labels on the glass vessels. Marcus looked at several rows of them and didn't recognize a single word. Not here. The secret is not here. But it was already very close. Marcus estimated the length of the house and the distance he had jumped through, and walked decisively towards the interior of the room. After searching for a while, he found a door behind the curtain. He pushed the door open and entered. There was a huge iron cabinet embedded in the wall, which was more than an arm's width and taller than a person's head. There is also a bright yellow triangular logo inlaid on the front of the iron cabinet, which is exactly the same as the entrance to the house. It's here. The moment the iron cabinet came into view, Marcus' intuition screamed loudly. He held the silver rod in his left hand and pulled the cabinet door handle with his right hand. The iron cabinet did not move, as if mocking. Pull, have no effect, push down, have no effect, turn, have no effect. He poked his hand there quietly, looking like a decoration. Undeterred, Marcus searched carefully and found a keyhole under the handle. He knelt down, took out a piece of wire, put his ear against the cabinet door, and tinkered gently. Click, click, click. The iron teeth were opened one after another. Finally, there was a soft ding, the iron teeth slid open, and silence returned. Marcus smiled contentedly. He still didn't dare to be careless, so he held the iron rod in his mouth, held the dagger in one hand, and opened the cabinet door with the other. Once, twice. The heavy iron cabinet still didn't move. His distorted face was reflected on the cabinet door, as if a little devil was laughing. "You're stupid. How on earth do you open this cabinet door?" Marcus touched it up and down for a while, and finally confirmed that in addition to the ordinary keyhole, this thing also had a magic lock. The keyhole is in the triangular mark on the cabinet door, and in the center of the three black crescents is a deep black gemstone. At first glance, it seems that it is used to respond to magical power. As for how this gem works, regardless of whether it is opened with a magic item or a magician uses a spell, in short, there is no role for the physical profession. So this must be it. If it is not the most important treasure, how can it be protected with so many layers of protection, and how many keys are needed to open it? Marcus had no more doubts in his mind. He retracted his weapon, pulled out another dagger from his waist, and slashed it hard in the crack of the door. Dazzling sparks exploded, flashed, and then disappeared again. This dagger is an imitation of the dagger of sanction. It is 3 levels worse than the real thing. It also has a lot of uses cut off and only maintains a special magic. The effect is to destroy all magic locks that come into contact with it. Give it to him to use when going on a mission, just to deal with the current situation. The knife slashed down, and the sharp edge swam from the highest point of the door crack to the lowest point. Marcus straightened up and was about to make another cut on the top of the cabinet door when the sound of a chain turning suddenly sounded from the far end of the room. Along with the sound of turning, there was also a young man's voice, light and cheerful, with ups and downs. 2 bottles of penicillium. 2 bottles of penicillium. Run fast. Run fast. 1 bottle of Staphylococcus aureus, 1 bottle of Pseudomonas aeruginosa, grow. Grow. Thanks to @origami and gart for the 200 starting coins. I originally wanted to write a 3,400 word crossover, but ended up writing a 4,200 word chapter. It's really more meow 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 meow. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Asking for all kinds of things. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 235. Greet returned to the laboratory excitedly. The necromancy boss who sat next to him during the meeting actually helped him. He made a request on the first day, and on the third night, he was given a lot of various molds. Things that grow in the corners, things that grow under the eaves, forgotten mops, moldy rags, uneaten melons, forgotten bread in the drawer. Green, green, blue, half blue but not green, half green but not green. With such a large number of various molds, penicillin can definitely be cultivated. Gretel didn't even wait until the dinner was over. After listening to the band playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs, and seeing the big guys leaving the stage one after another, he hurriedly slipped out. After getting on the carriage, I had time to fill my stomach, a piece of fish steak in my left hand, a piece of meat pie in my right hand, no. All the way back to the laboratory, the surroundings were completely silent, and there was no longer any light in the nearby houses. Bernard was also in a deep sleep. When he saw Greet opening the door and coming in, he opened his eyes and turned over to continue sleeping. Gretel didn't pick him up either. I put on protective clothing, opened the airlocks layer by layer, and went in, preparing to put the mold back into the red zone first. Making culture media, adding bacterial strains, and then adding these molds is such a big job that it can't be done in a while. Tonight's task is to put the molds in. The chain turns. Airlock opens. The sound of the mechanism was heard, and Marcus Breno, who was in front of the iron cabinet, suddenly turned around and tightened his grip on the dagger. Someone came in. Want to hide? Do you want to use shadow jump to leave here temporarily, wait for the other party to exit, and then come back to search? Or, simply stop doing nothing and rush out to kidnap the visitor and torture him about the location of the treasure? Marcus listened with bated breath. The singing outside the room is getting closer. In the sound of his own heartbeat, he seemed so light and carefree. What a good luck, Marcus thought, that little mage looked completely defenseless. And he took no barbarian entourage with him. Marcus looked carefully and found that in the huge room, there were only the footsteps and singing of the little mage. He had confirmed with his own eyes in the restaurant a few days ago that the little mage was only at level 3. In other words, as long as he acted quickly enough and was lucky enough, he could restrain the barbarian before alerting him. Then, the entire dragon's secret treasure will be open to him. Marcus jumped up silently. His arms and legs were spread out, hanging upside down from the ceiling, motionless. The spider walking technique allows people like them who walk in the dark night to move on walls and ceilings like spiders. If that little mage walks into the treasure room, then just pounce on him unexpectedly the moment he enters the door. He waited patiently, like a spider spreading its web, waiting for prey to arrive. Outside the room, the footsteps of the little mage were still approaching, 1 step, 2 steps, suddenly, the footsteps stopped, followed by the little mage's surprised voice. Huh? What's wrong? What did he find? Marcus' heart tightened slightly. Along the way, the items I touched and the footprints I left, no, I didn't touch anything. The floor was smooth and there were no footprints left. Every door is closed, and the curtain outside the door, the curtain. He did close the curtain, but maybe it wasn't restored to exactly the same state. Even a little wrinkle or unevenness may be discovered by the little mage outside. Can't wait any longer. Marcus jumped down and rushed out with a bang. The cold light of the dagger flashed, and the sharp tip reflected a monster wearing indescribable clothing and a long beak on its head. Greet suddenly stood up. One hand reached for his waist bag and held a tube of potassium permanganate. The palm of the other hand stretched forward, making a gesture of casting a spell. Marcus stopped immediately. Dragon Breath Technique. That little mage's Dragon Breath Technique, the Dragon Breath Technique that once swallowed up a 9th level knight, is coming. But this time he came prepared. The thief took out a talisman and shook it hard. The red light rose silently and formed a translucent barrier, firmly protecting him within it. Huh, this is the flame shield given by the referee, you didn't expect it. This shield can absorb fire magic, enough to withstand 1 or even 2 dragon breath spells. You are just a 3rd level mage. Without your trump card, let's see what other tricks you can do. But no flames came out of Greet's palm. Instead, he closed the 5 fingers of his right hand to form a cone shape and stabbed the thief hard. The firelight on the barrier fluctuated slightly, and Marcus felt dizzy. His ears were buzzing, as if he had been hit in the front. Gretel had no intention of using the dragon breath hand. What a joke, this room is full of bacteria he cultivated. If a white fire is swept over, half of the glass petri dish will explode. His hard work for so many days was all over. If he wants to fight, at least let him retreat to the anatomy room. It's all empty space. So Gretel cast another spell. The ultrasonic attack was transformed from the B ultrasound magic engraved in the meditation environment when he advanced to the second level mage. Colorless, invisible, and silent, as long as the power of the ultrasonic wave is strong enough and the output point is precise enough, this attack magic will explode your eyes and burn your heart. Have you ever heard of high fideo? This is a large one. Of course, Gretel cannot achieve high enough focusing accuracy, such as being able to hit the eyeballs of moving targets at a distance of 4 or 5 meters. So he adopted a headshot strategy, simply enlarge the circle where the ultrasound is focused to the size of a human face, and then work hard to increase the power, increase the power, increase the power. Fire shields are unresponsive to ultrasonic strikes. Gretel's blow was not wasted at all, it hit Marcus in the face. The thief was hit so hard that his head fell back. Without the physical strength brought by the high-level physics profession, he would have fainted and died on the spot. Even so, Marcus wiped his ears and nose casually and wiped the blood on his hand. "What's this? What's this?" Gretel still stretched out his hand and aimed at him, stepped back, and retreated step by step. Marcus gritted his teeth, lowered his body, and started running forward. Fold left, fold right, jump to the ground, jump up. Several quick feints in a row. Greed was dazzled and immediately lost sight of the enemy in his field of vision. He accelerated his feet and retreated continuously, but suddenly a strong force came from directly in front of him, causing him to fall backward. MD. It's really no good compared to agility in combat professions. If you can't keep the distance and kite the opponent, that's death. Greed fell to the ground, cursing secretly. Opposite him, Marcus Breno simply cursed. At #$U0026*. What is this little mage carrying? The knife was struck just now, but that strange robe was not even touched. Greed. Why do you think I can't open a shield? When fighting a mage, start by giving yourself a bunch of defenses, including mage armor, shielding, and resistance enhancement. This is the basic thing. The knife just now only took away my shield technique. Gretel rolled on the spot and shrank into the corner. Just as he was about to put up the shield again, his pupils suddenly shrank. The enemy dressed in black and masked with a black scarf did not pounce again. Instead, he waved his hand and swept away 7 or 8 petri dishes and threw them at him. "Don't want!" Gretel screamed. "There are bacteria in here." "It's bacteria. It's the various pathogenic bacteria he cultivated. In this house alone, half of the list of infectious diseases from Category A to Category B can be collected. This can be smashed casually." Gretel temporarily cancelled the shield technique. Hold the potassium permanganate tightly with your left hand, stretch your right palm flat, and the blazing white fire suddenly spurts out and sweeps across the front. Snap, 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 snap. The vessel exploded, glass flew everywhere, and agar, bacteria, and spores turned silently to ashes. Greed had deliberately controlled the range of the spell so as not to sweep into the nearby shelf. However, at this moment, more petri dishes flew up, and the entire wall of shelves was picked up by the thief and smashed towards him. "MD. Do you still want to live? I'm wearing protective clothing and using air bubbles, and you have nothing but a face towel. Still smashed. Smash you a." Gretel was furious. He could have activated the teleportation technique and escaped immediately, but at this time he couldn't care less, he just wanted to capture the enemy quickly. He cast another shield spell on himself, knelt down on one knee, and pulled off his gloves. The fingertips are exposed in the air, stretched out, holding a ray of breeze. "Give birth. Give me all the bacteria and spores that are floating freely in the air in this room. Breed. Accelerate. Grow. All the culture media that is spilled is your nourishment. Clean up later. There is plenty of white fire. Disinfectant water is also available. I'll kill you first and then I'll finish it off. The green light suddenly flourished. Gretel cast the spell with all his strength in anger, causing the magic to sweep through the air, the water on the ground, and the enemy's body wrapped in black. On the clothes, on the dagger, and even on the thief's face towel, clusters of mildew soon appeared. Marcus was stunned. As a night watchman of the glorious Holy See, he had also seen similar evil spells, and had even killed one with his own hands. When he cut his throat with a sharp blade, the evil priest was kneeling down to spawn a green wheat seedling. But there is not a single plant in this room, not even the slightest green thing. What is the other party doing? What does he want to spawn to deal with me? Before I could finish a thought, my chest suddenly felt itchy, followed by severe pain. Marcus bent down subconsciously, covered his mouth and coughed violently. He let go of his hand and looked down, his palm was full of blood. What kind of evil spell is this? Disease spell? Is this little mage a necromancer? We need to kill him quickly. If we don't kill him, we won't be able to get out alive today. Marcus rushed forward. The black light of the dagger flourished, and all his own strength and the constant magic of the dagger were fully activated, and he wiped it towards Greet's throat. This knife was unreserved, and the effect was astonishing. The shield technique and the mage's armor cracked silently, the thick leather protective clothing cut a hole, and the sharp dagger continued to penetrate deep. Boom! Marcus' whole body bounced outward. In front of Gretel, the force field shield popped up silently, firmly protecting its owner. Endless ink pen. There is constant mage armor on the master. When the armor is broken, force field shield is automatically triggered. Inside the shield, Gretel looked horrified, glanced at him from afar, and touched the slit on the throat of the protective suit. Then, without hesitation, he activated the teleportation technique, and the light flashed and disappeared. Thanks to @Fireworks Viewing for the 100 starting coins. On what is meant by death without limits. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 236. The moment Gretel disappeared, Marcus Breno's legs weakened and he fell to his knees. Only then did he feel terrible. My head felt dizzy and a little hot, and my throat hurt terribly. Every time I took a breath, it hurt from my nose to my chest. He took off his face mask and coughed hard. Half of the ground was phlegm and half of it was blood. My right leg also started to throb with pain. Marcus reached out and touched it. It was hot. There isn't much time left. When the little mage comes back with the guards, knights, and even the high-level mage, he won't be able to escape, let alone complete the mission. Gotta hurry up. Marcus pushed hard on the ground. The hard stone floor was shiny and covered with glass particles. He made 2 cuts with just 1 press. He didn't care, he checked the direction and headed towards the treasure room in 2 or 3 steps. The large iron cabinet, which is as tall as 1 person, is still standing quietly. Marcus couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If he had hid and waited for the little mage to leave, and then calmly opened the cabinet, he might have gained better results. After all, who said that the little mage would definitely come in and open the cabinet? But it's too late to think about this now. Marcus changed the weapon to an imitation of the dagger of sanction, slashed the top and bottom, and cut open the iron cabinet with force. When he opened the cabinet door, A chill hit his face, making him shiver on the spot. Sneeze. Marcus turned and sneezed. My head hurt more and my nose became more and more blocked. He looked carefully and saw that there were no jewels, dragon scales, or artifacts inside. They were all glass tubes, standing straight on the top floor of the cabinet, surrounded by air conditioning that came from nowhere. What are these? Dragon blood? Dragon marrow? Some kind of potion? He took one and examined it carefully. There are dragons and phoenixes flying on the wall of the tube, and there are handwritten labels on them, but I still don't recognize any of the words on them. Marcus wanted to pull it out and smell it, but as soon as he moved his hand, he heard a voice outside shouting. "Boss! Boss, are you okay?" The sound made the walls buzz. Marcus panicked, quickly grabbed a handful of pipes, put them in his arms, and closed the cabinet door. Take half a step back, identify the direction clearly, activate shadow jump again, and run away. After running desperately for a while in the darkness, he turned around and saw a pure white beam of light falling from the sky, exactly where the previous laboratory was. It came so quickly. In such a short time, a high-level mage was invited. Run. Marcus turned his head, disappeared into the darkness, and continued to run. On the other side, Gretel had been carried out of the portal, and his feet touched the ground outside the wall. Gretel was directly brought to the outer edge of the mystery lock by the teleportation technique. The light faded and he landed on his feet. The first thing he did was to add amplification magic to himself and shouted loudly. "Come on! Help! Someone breaks into my laboratory. They are going to spread the plague. Laboratory pathogenic bacteria may be leaked and may cause infectious diseases. Report it to the guards decisively. No, in this world, report it to the Magic Council decisively. Let the higher-ups intervene. Blockade. Isolation. Disinfect. Trend. Of course, the ruler of the city must be called up to do this kind of thing. The teleportation technique is fixed outside Igor's mystery lock. It's simply too good to be more to his liking." Gretel shouted 3 times. Suddenly his eyes lit up, and a ray of white light shot straight down from the mage tower and enveloped him. Gretel quickly shouted. "Don't touch me! Don't drag me! I'm stained too! Wait until I clean it up." God knows what this beam of light is. If it is just for lighting, it would be fine, but if it comes with teleportation and traction, if you pull him in now, you will get into trouble. In order to show that he really needed cleaning, Gretel had already taken out a large bucket of disinfectant while shouting. The heavy bucket fell to the ground, and Gretel felt like an Amitabha in her heart, thanking her desperately. Thanks to Archmage Tolga for the space bag. Thanks to Babel for providing the electrolysis experimental conditions. Thanks to Aurora for her daily trip to bring him disinfectant. Thanks to his own habit of always carrying a bucket with him. He opened the lid of the bucket, held his breath, and poured it on himself as hard as he could. Half a list of infectious diseases. Pathogenic bacteria in half a laboratory. God knows how much it got on you. If we don't finish the disinfecting quickly, it will be like bringing a moving god of plague to the core of the Magic Council. A basin. A basin. Another pot. After 3 or 5 pots, I summoned the floating saucer, knocked down the disinfectant and poured it on top, and poured a full saucer. Although the floating saucer is called a saucer, it actually has a load-bearing capacity of 100 pounds. Turn over and pour it on your head. After pouring it carefully, from the forehead to the soles of the feet, he took off his protective clothing and jumped to the side. Put the protective clothing into a special bag and use white fire to burn the grass and trees in this area. Also be careful to stand upwind to prevent the disinfectant water from being heated and producing chlorine gas, which could poison you. All work done. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief and crossed himself off the list of sources of infection. Then he took 2 intentional steps into the mystery lock, raised his head and shouted. "I've cleaned up." The light beam shook twice. The secret lock was slightly opened, and a bone horse's hoofs were on fire as it ran out with a bang. Immediately, the necromancer turned over and fell down. Before he could stand still, he hurriedly grabbed Gretel. "Plague. What plague? Your laboratory? You made it?" "Part of it is done." Greet was going crazy with anxiety. He didn't care whether he recognized the person coming, but it would be nice if someone came forward to help. "That guy invaded my laboratory. He knocked over everything I made. He also had a lot of it on him. If he ran into the city, it might be a big plague. 7 of the things I made, 8 of them are serious infectious diseases." "How strong?" "Better than dysentery." Gray privileged that he had read his thesis. If he hadn't read it, he probably wouldn't be so anxious to ask. "The things I made, at least 5 or 6, are stronger than the dysentery in Heartland City. And they are all mixed together. If it spreads, it's hard to say which one it is, or several types mixed together." As he said this, he had already applied healing skills to himself with his backhand. One, and another, and another. The white light flashes continuously. "When I was fighting just now, although I was wrapped in protective clothing from beginning to end, it was hard to say how much protection this leather protective clothing had. Not to mention that there was a gash in the back. He doesn't want tuberculosis, he doesn't want anthrax, he doesn't want diphtheria or anything like that." "Have you contracted the plague?" another somewhat familiar voice asked. Greet looked back and was overjoyed. "Archmage Carlyle. You are here too. Hurry, gather people and seal off the surrounding area of the laboratory. Then catch the guy who infiltrated. You must catch him. He must be seen alive and dead. Every place where the intruder passes must be disinfected, and everyone who has been in close contact must be isolated and observed. I'm asking you." Archmage Carlyle is furious. Could he not be in a hurry? The moment the mage's armor was broken and the force field shield popped up, a warning signal was sent to him. "As soon as I got up from the bed and before I put on my clothes, I heard Gretel shouting from outside the tower. The mage who was monitoring the secrets forwarded it and started banging in his room. I hurriedly ran out of the mage tower, but was rushed to the front by a necromancer. Bah, I know you guys in Black Crow Swamp are so evil that you want to abduct little Gretel all day long. I should be fine." Gretel threw 5 or 6 healing spells at once, and finally felt relieved and stopped temporarily. "But the laboratory needs to be quick. If the blockade is late, it will be too late. You said it would spread the plague. What evidence do you have?" Carlyle looked at him with burning eyes. Gretel opened his mouth, but for a moment he didn't know how to answer. "Everything is at the bottom of the mountain." "Did you bring your own protective clothing?" "The disinfection was too thorough. He even stepped on his shoes in the disinfectant water a few times. At this time, the bacteria in the seams of the solace were probably killed. Could it be that you tell the Great Master, come with me down the mountain to have a look, and after the verification is completed, go up the mountain to find someone to work? Hey, there it is." Gretel suddenly slapped his forehead. He took out his wet protective clothing and opened the bird's beak, revealing the layers of carbon cores in the bird's beak. He looked at Archmage Carlyle for a moment, then turned his wrist and handed it to the necromancer. "Are you from the direction of the plague? Can you feel the plague seeds in this carbon core?" The bone horse lowered its head, took the bird's beak, and handed it to the necromancer. Its owner took the silver beak in his hand, closed his eyes and felt it for a moment, and his eyes lit up like a will-o'-the-wisp. "Did you make this? You are so strong. Use these as casting materials for me, and destroying a village will definitely not be a problem." "Well." Gretel sweated. Archmage Carlyle looked at him, then at the necromancer, and his expression darkened on the spot. He took out a mechanical nightingale, pressed its beak, and shouted to the nightingale. "Old Sam! Don't sleep! Get up! Call the patrol team, call the law enforcement team. Now, immediately. We will be in big trouble later." As soon as he let go, the nightingale flapped its wings and flew straight towards the Tower of Babel. Archmage Carlyle exhaled. "I've called the people from the review committee, and they can mobilize the city defense directly. What else do you need? Look for priests, the more the better. We also need medical mages." Gretel opened his hands and counted. "Necromancer, do you have any protective clothing for facing the plague? Try to bring as many as possible. The people you arrest, especially those who are fighting in close combat with that guy, should try to wear protective clothing. Ask Oro to lead people to make as much disinfectant as possible. 1 ton or 2 tons is not too much. By the way, we need to make bleaching powder." "No problem. No problem." The 2 archmages each responded. Carlyle gave an order, and one by one of his disciples were blasted into the air. Beside the necromancer, the bone horse stomped back, not sure if he was going to spread the news or to get supplies. Greet thought hard, and thought harder, and finally couldn't think of anything else missing, so he relaxed a little. He looked down the mountain eagerly. Seeing that he was still worried, Archmage Carlyle comforted him. "Don't rush for a moment. When that old guy most comes out, we can go down directly by airship. It's faster and takes less effort than me flying with you dash." "Waste of time." A low groan suddenly sounded next to him, and with dazzling lightning, the legendary mage from Thunderhorn slowly walked out. Archmage Carlyle immediately stepped aside and saluted. "Teacher. Follow me." The Lord of Thunder nodded slightly to him and reached out to grab Gretel's wrist. On the other side, Archmage Carlyle had already caught up, stretched out his arm automatically and sent it to the teacher. The lightning flashed away. Greet's eyesight dimmed and brightened, and when he regained his vision, he was already standing outside the laboratory wall with the 2 magicians. The sign Gret Nordmark Biological Laboratory is embedded in the wall, shining brightly. A big chapter of 3,000 words. Mr. Chun, leader of the Alliance, adds 10 more updates. Completed. I will continue to update Yamengbing tomorrow. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Asking for various. There have been so few follow-up subscriptions, monthly tickets, and recommended tickets recently. I feel like you don't love me anymore. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 237. Boss. Boss, how are you? As soon as Greet landed, he heard Bernard shouting at the top of his lungs. The savage's voice, like nothing else, was absolutely full of energy and could be heard clearly across the yard and the wall. Gretel stood on tiptoe and shouted. "I'm here. Open the door." "Coming." With a creak, the door of the laboratory opened, and the barbarians rushed out in an uneasy manner. Taking advantage of this little time, Master Discard turned his head and asked Gretel. "How many intruders are there? When were they discovered? Did you come over immediately?" "There's only one." Gray gathered his nerves and reported to the legendary mage. Master Descartes listened silently and snorted. "Who told you not to advance? As long as you know some level 2 magic, you won't be so embarrassed." Gretel lowered his head, not daring to say anything. Master Descartes pushed up his monocle and looked at the top of the little guy's head. He was actually quite satisfied. When a mage was approached by a warrior, he still dared to fight back, fought back and forth, and wounded him twice with his unique magic. His fighting instincts were really good. That's right, how can a child with the plasticity department not fight? Our Thunderhorn has always been the #1 combat force of the Magic Council. Of course, The subsequent escape was also timely and decisive. If you win, fight. If you don't, then retreat and ask for help. Children must not be brave. The magic constant plan of the endless ink pen was designed by him personally, and the purpose was to save the little guy's life to the maximum extent possible. By the way, speaking of escaping, he took off his monocle, raised his fingers, and flicked the rim of the glasses several times. A trace of electric light flew out from the lens and shot in all directions, followed by a white light rising straight up. Seeing Gretel looking at him eagerly, he gave a few words of advice. First, lock the space and prohibit the use of teleportation in the surrounding areas. Then summon the surrounding patrol teams to block and arrest people. By the way, is the intruder still inside? Gretel honestly said he didn't know. The legendary mage raised his hand and pointed, and a wave of magic swept out. No, he ran away. Let's go in first when the patrol comes to arrest him. Wait, Greet quickly reached out to stop him. Let's see if there is any leakage in the laboratory first. That thief, or any other profession, must not break through the wall. What do you think? The legendary mage raised his chin to him. Gretel looked at him, and then at Archmage Carlyle next to him. Seeing that both of them had a look like we won't do anything, you can handle it yourself, he thought for a moment. Can you give me a spell that can help me see where it is hot? Such as low light vision, dark vision, etc. The two high-level mages looked at each other. Archmage Carlyle raised his hand, and a spell fell on Gretel. Gretel felt a flash before his eyes, and the brightness of his vision suddenly increased several levels, as if it had changed from night to dusk. He looked around carefully and shook his head. This one doesn't work. Change it to another one. Another flash. What came into view this time was an almost black and white picture, while the cracks in the door of the laboratory and the outlines of several people around him were obviously brighter than the environment. A closer comparison shows that the two magicians are slightly darker, while the barbarian's torso, skin, especially the mouth and nose, appear particularly bright. That's right. This is what I want, infrared vision with heat source sensing function. Greet jumped up and ran to the laboratory. Walls, roofs, look at them piece by piece. The temperature inside was definitely higher than outside, not to mention that he had a white fire, and the temperature rise was even more astonishing. Whenever there is a little crack in the wall and the air inside leaks out, under infrared vision, there's nothing to hide from. He reacted quite quickly. Behind him, Archmage Carlyle praised in a low voice. The Lord of Thunder snorted. As long as he reaches the third level of mage, you don't need to do anything. Archmage Carlyle lowered his head and smiled bitterly. The two high-level mages stood side by side, watching Gretel go up and down, carefully inspecting the entire outer wall of the laboratory, almost lying on the wall. Halfway through the inspection, the wind roared overhead, a shuttle rushed over, and 5 great magicians filed out. It was obvious that the jury was dispatched urgently. There might be some related factions, and all the magicians were present. The leading mage, who was wearing a black robe with a skull embroidered on it, was impatient and rushed over. How's it going? How's it going? I haven't seen the leak yet, Greet looked up and replied. The black-robed mage breathed a sigh of relief, but also looked a little disappointed, and his steps slowed down. Another red-robed mage quickly passed him. Teacher. The Lord of Thunder nodded. Here we come. Arrange the patrol team. When the mages from the law enforcement team arrive, ask them to track the intruder and catch it as soon as possible. I just saw it. There is only one person who invaded. He used shadow jump when entering and exiting the laboratory. The first point of contact is. With a flick of his fingertips, a white light flew out far away and hung at the tip of the long grass. The red-robed mage nodded repeatedly, immediately turned to the back, and pulled over a mage with misty eyes, as if he was drunk. Quick, quick, Help me find the traces of the intruder. I have to do this, we can't wait for the law enforcement team. The person he pulled over muttered. The red-robed mage pushed him hard. Hey, you are from the prophecy department. This is your job. But my specialty is stargazing. The mage from the prophecy department was somewhat reluctant. He looked down at the haystack, threw a spell casually, and suddenly shuddered. Danger! Great danger! His movements suddenly accelerated, and his fingers rolled dizzyingly, as if he was driving from 0.5x speed to 2x speed. After a moment, a gleaming green light shot out from his fingertips and illuminated the footprints on the ground. Then it jumped up and quickly lit up a large series of footprints. The horse's hooves are like thunder. A patrol team just arrived and was caught by the review committee. Let's go. Follow the tracer magic and catch people. The prophecy mage breathed out. The next moment, he turned to the laboratory, his eyes suddenly bulged, and one finger shook like a convulsion. A bad omen, I saw a bad omen enough to destroy the city of Nevis, a greater danger, here dash. Then ruin it. The two great magicians of the protection system and the conjuration system walked over side by side. The rotating mage from the conjuration department looked fine and even nodded and smiled at Griddle, but the one from the protection department had a grim look on his face. He grabbed the red-robed mage of the plasticity department with one hand, and pointed at the laboratory with the other hand. His saliva flew everywhere, spraying all over the other person's head and face. Who approved the construction of this laboratory? Huh? How can such a dangerous thing be given to a child to play with? It is still built in the city with no protection at all. If something happens, will the entire parliament follow? Unlucky. Little child Gretel Nordmark rushed over happily, and was about to declare that the outer wall was not leaked when he was stopped in his tracks by the roar of the great magician. A second-level magician, when this laboratory was built, he was still a first-level magician. In the eyes of high-level magicians, his combat power is close to zero. The unspoken rules of the Magic Council are that magicians below the 5th level cannot preside over the Mage Tower independently, which is equivalent to being ineligible to preside over important topics. An inconspicuous gadget that everyone pretends not to see, a laboratory that may destroy the city. How could such a thing be left in the hands of a second-level magician? But it can't be destroyed. The exterior wall is in good condition and there is no leakage at all. Gretel exclaimed. He has purified so many pathogenic bacteria. If you give him a little more time, he can make penicillin. And can the P4 laboratory be destroyed at will? Do you want to blow it up or bury it deeply? With just a little carelessness, germs can spread throughout the city. Can't be destroyed. The mage on duty of the necromancer department was also anxious. He took a step across, blocking the front of Gretel, and stood opposite the great magician of the protection department. This project was commissioned by us. It's almost finished. I've seen it, and the stuff it's made is very powerful and very useful to our plague branch. This laboratory is under our protection. If something goes wrong, Black Crow Swamp will be responsible. It's not your turn yet. Next to the great magicians, the Lord of Thunder snorted coldly. He pushed up his monocle, pointed at the red-robed mage, and scolded him. Children are immature, don't you understand either? Whatever he wants to do in the laboratory, you can do it to him. How can such a big laboratory have no magic defense at all? He only knows how to prevent the things he made from being leaked. He is a second-level child and doesn't know what protection is needed to withstand the invasion of foreign enemies. What's the use of you? Didn't you think carefully before approving this project? What's going on in your head? Is it because I have been using the plastic energy system for a long time and my skull is filled with magma? As soon as the legendary mage spoke, red-robed mage Sam immediately stood up straight, lowered his head, and accepted the training honestly. That laboratory was part of the reward given to greed. The scale and construction budget were determined by the entire review meeting. He did not make the decision alone, and he should not bear the responsibility alone. But, being scolded by the teacher. Then just listen, how can you still say something back? The great magician of the protection department silently let go and took 2 steps to the side to avoid the anger of the legendary mage. The man from Black Crow Swamp breathed a sigh of relief, but was a little unwilling to do so. His eyes turned back and forth between Gretel and the laboratory. As for the other 2, they felt a little weak in their hearts. They just hoped that the wrath of the Lord of Thunder would not fall on them. How could they dare to say anything? Master Deckard cursed for half an hour, and electricity surged on his monocle, as if it might burst out at any time. The surrounding magicians stood and listened quietly, and stayed with him honestly for half an hour. Gretel looked at his nose at his mouth, and his mouth at his heart. He stood aside with his ears pricked up, and finally understood why the legendary mage was there in person. If the Lord of Thunder doesn't come, which gentleman from the review committee will write the word demolish to the laboratory, and he can stop it? Or does he want to watch the great magicians fight live? The storm of reprimands finally came to an end. Master Deckard turned to Gretel with a gentle expression. Little guy, since you want to say there is no leak here, then prove it to us. Okay. I'll go in first and clean up. Thanks to @RNGS for the 1,500 starting coins. Thanks it doesn't matter if I read the book 100 times and refuse to reward it, I will give you 100 starting coins. Pray for the people of Henan, readers in Henan, I hope everyone is safe. The heavy rain is so terrible. Woohoo. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 238. Gretel raised his feet and walked towards the laboratory. Behind him, the great magician of the protection system shouted in a funny voice. Hey, little guy. Do you want to destroy the body and eliminate all traces? Then tell us that you didn't cause any trouble. These dangers can be killed, Gretel turned back like a wind. As long as you follow the correct method of protection, it will not infect the user. As long as it is killed correctly, it will not leak out and cause harm. That makes sense, the white-robed mage nodded playfully. Okay, let's go in and take a look together. High-level mages swarmed in. Arriving at the dressing room, Gretel turned around and stopped everyone, bent down and pulled out the protective clothing from the side. Masters, please change your protective equipment and follow me into the danger zone. The 13th and 4th level high-level mages looked at each other and were all amused. The white-robed mage from the protection department even laughed out loud. Protection, little guy, are you talking to me about protection? Master, I know nothing about your power. Gretel bowed slightly. However, I can be sure that the protection method I use can provide effective protection and will not bring danger to the outside world. If possible, please also ask the masters to change the protective equipment according to the requirements of the laboratory. He pointed to the danger, keep out sign on the wall. In the crowd, the mage from Black Crow Swamp laughed and pushed forward. Okay, let's not make things difficult for the children. Well, little Gretel, how do you wear protective equipment? You put on the mask first, these are the goggles. Greet instructed him in the same way, put a bubble on your head, and then put on the one-piece protective suit, fasten here, then here, press tight, no leakage at all. Archmage Carlyle and Old Sam looked at each other, and the 2 brothers followed suit and started putting on protective clothing. The white-robed mage from the protection department looked unhappy and refused to move. Beside him, the conjuration magician smiled and pulled him, took out an alchemy doll, and threw it outward. The doll grows as soon as it lands on the ground, stretches out its arms and kicks its legs. In a moment, it has grown to the same size as a real person. How about trying this? The white-robed mage snorted, his hands flashed with light, and he threw up the shields one by one. The doll took 2 wobbly steps forward and stood at the door of the dressing area. The conjuration magician took out another puppet and waved to Gretel. "Little guy, can you put a suit on it too?" "Okay. Thank you, master." Gretel responded and ran over. The great magician of the conjuration department looked at him busy with a smile and asked casually, "Little guy, can you withstand the suit of clothes? Do you want me to add 2 shields for you?" "Thank you, master." "No need." Greed tilted his head slightly and kept his hands. "I know the things I made myself. Staphylococcus aureus, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Clostridium tetani, these will be fine as long as they don't scratch the skin. Vibrio cholerae and Shigella dysenteriae are introduced through the mouth, so as long as I wash my hands and face before coming out and don't put them in my mouth, I'll be fine. The more troublesome ones are Mycobacterium tuberculosis and diphtheria bacilli. As long as they are inhaled into the nose, they will cause problems, so I wear a mask with an air bubble on the outside of the mask, and a layer of protective clothing on the outside of the air bubble. With 3 layers of protection, there will be no problems." He spoke eloquently. Even if several great magicians have never heard the name of this string of bacteria, it sounds like at #UN% to their ears, and they can understand that he does have his own reasons. At that moment, Greed himself was fully equipped and opened the gate to the buffer zone. People wearing protective suits filed in. The great magician of the prophecy department threw out a secret eye. "Let's just watch from here." The secret eye followed everyone forward. The outer airlock lowers and the inner airlock rises. The first and second rooms were okay. After walking through the anatomy room, a horrible scene appeared on the screen of the secret eyes. The storage shelves in the room were half collapsed. Glass dishes fell to the ground in large numbers. The ground is covered in clusters of misty, white, green, yellow, and blue mold spots everywhere. Debris was strewn all over the ground in a mess, being stepped on and kicked away without a care. This. The necromancer was so heartbroken that his voice trembled. He walked briskly back and forth, bent down to poke at the shelf, and kicked at the fragment. After a moment, he rushed to the intact shelf again, pressed against the wooden frame, and looked at the glass dishes one by one. Such a big loss. So many things were destroyed. Can it be repaired? How long will it take to make up for it? I said that Guy Carlyle is unreliable. If you enter the Black Crow Swamp, you can't be bullied like this. Jab. A sharp bolt of lightning jumped out of the void and hit the ground like a whip. Master Carlyle's embarrassed voice came through the magic device. "Grom, don't steal things from children. Do you think I didn't see it? Once the project is completed, it's not like little Greed will not deliver the results." Who stole it?" "I just took the glass shards off the soles of my shoes." Gretel was full of annoyance and was amused. He hurriedly walked past the shelf and breathed a sigh of relief. "It's okay, the shelves over there mainly contain Pseudomonas aeruginosa and golden grain. It's faster to make. But that guy must not steal my strains." As he spoke, he hurried into the inner room. As soon as I opened the refrigerator, I screamed. "My spawn! What's wrong?" The necromancer rushed in. Greed was half buried in the refrigerator, touching one on the left and one on the right. "My cholera! My anthrax! My tuberculosis! Ah!" He put it on the top layer because these germs were troublesome. As for the invaders, if you don't take the E. coli and streptococcus in the middle, and you don't take the candida and vibrio parahemolyticus at the bottom, you might as well take Botox. I can even give you a beauty treatment when I get back. You have to pick the most troublesome one. If any one of these tubes of bacteria is leaked, a great plague will break out. I can't live this day. Gretel turned around and threw himself in front of the sound-transmitting weapon. At this moment, he completely ignored the group of high-level mages outside and shouted as loud as he could. "Be careful during the arrest. That guy stole 3 strains of my bacteria. They are all purified and concentrated plague seeds. Don't let him throw them away. You must find what you throw out. Also, when fighting him, try not to get close. If you must get close, when you come back, wash your hands and clothes, wash your whole body, and don't eat before. Be careful not to bite him. And don't spit on your face. You may be infected with the plague. Everyone must be isolated and observed after returning. Including horses, dogs, and all livestock, all must be isolated, observed, and disinfected." Urgent shouts echoed through the magic props in the room. Several high-level mages looked at each other in confusion as they looked at the light curtain coming from the mystical eye. After a moment of silence, the great magician of the prophecy department sneered and laughed. "He ordered us to work quite confidently. Then we have to help him pass the message, otherwise." The members of the conjuration department's jury responded with a smile. He murmured a few words and raised a ball of light in his hand, the size of a walnut, flowing in 7 colors. The mage repeated Gretel's request in a low voice, flicked his fingers, and the ball of light flew out from the crack of the door as fast as a meteor. It rotates all the way, glows all the way, lights up the night sky, and flies towards the search team ahead. In the dark night, Marcus Breno ran as hard as he could. He wanted to escape to the city. The person in charge of the spy base and the owner of the hotel, even if his faith has been contaminated, he probably won't betray him immediately. Even if it doesn't work, you can still find a channel to help him send things back. Just send it back and the job is done. After completing the task, you will get points. With the points, even if he can't use it himself, his daughter can exchange for a holy potion and become a knight. Daughter. Marcus Breno coughed up a mouthful of bloody sputum and felt his breathing became slightly easier. The sound of horse hooves from behind is still coming, from directly behind, to the left and to the right. The pursuers spread a large net, caught him from the direction of the city, and kept chasing him towards the suburbs. It sounded like there were at least 3 teams and dozens of horses. Who is behind that little mage who is only at the 2nd or 3rd level? And he brought a dog with him. Fierce barking came from behind. Marcus Breno gritted his teeth and threw himself into a stream. The icy winter stream suddenly filled up, causing him to shiver, and his chest immediately felt tight again. Breathing is getting harder and harder. If he continues like this, he won't be able to beat even a 5th level knight. He forced himself to wade down for a while, cross the stream, and then turn upstream. Starting from the city of Nevis in the northeast direction, keep walking along the river, walking through the river, walking through the lake, walking through the canal, you can reach the other side of the coast. If they could really escape to the other side of the sea, the church would have a large stronghold in Chromo City at the mouth of the sea. Wading through the water took a while, but not as much as Marcus expected. As the sky grew brighter, dogs barked behind him, and the pursuers caught up again. Marcus gritted his teeth and simply turned back. After running for a while, he climbed up the tree and lay down on the treetops by the roadside. In front of 5 cavalrymen came with hounds and horses. Just as the last person passed by, Marcus suddenly fell down from the treetop and pinched the man's neck with the dagger. A stream of blood spurted out. He remained silent and rushed towards the second to last one. The first 3 were shocked when they heard the sound. Marcus gritted his teeth and danced his dagger wildly. The 3rd cavalry fell to the ground, the 4th cavalry fell to the ground. Just as he was about to kill the last one, he suddenly felt a tightness in his chest and coughed up another mouthful of blood. With just a quick movement of his hand, a steel knife struck him head-on. Marcus almost gave in, his left shoulder was in severe pain, and a large piece of flesh was still cut off. He endured the pain, killed the last cavalryman, and killed the hound that was biting his calf with a single stroke. The decline in strength was too great. What kind of sinister spell did that little mage cast on him? Even if he only had the strength of a 5th-level knight, he would not be injured if he killed that group of people. Marcus held his chest and coughed twice. He took off a set of cavalry clothes and put them on, picked a war horse for himself, tied the dead cavalry to their horses, whipped each in different directions, and drove them away from a distance. Keep on going. Escape, or find a teleportation point installed by the church and teleport things back. 3,000 words, another update completed. Thanks to @GCNUN for the 500 starting coin reward. Today's reading data is good, but why are collection increases and new subscriptions so bleak? Depressed. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. You can't help me with the addition of collections and new readers, so anyway, come and count the votes to comfort me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 239. An hour after the battle, the second group of pursuers reined in their horses and began to examine the messy marks on the ground. There was fighting here. There is no doubt. The second cavalryman jumped off his mount, leaned down as hard as he could, and squinted his eyes to look at the turned-up soil on the ground. He suddenly drew his sword, stabbed it into the soil several times, and picked up several pieces of soil. There was blood. And a lot of it. It is impossible for a person to bleed so much when he is injured. The scene was buried. The people who were cleaning up the scene. He almost lay on the ground, spreading his thumb and index finger as far as they could, measuring the footprints on the ground. There is only one. If our people win, we don't have to cover the blood before leaving. So, it was the intruder who killed our brother. Find him, chase him. He gave the order and the team dispersed, looking for traces. After a while, the cavalry came over one after another and reported. I've got horse hoof prints here. It's also in the backward direction. Judging from the depth of the hoof prints, someone should be riding on it. On the left-hand side, going down the slope, there are blades of grass trampled down all the way. There is also a fork in the road ahead that turns right. This. The captain hesitated. He lowered his head and thought for a moment, then took out a copper pipe, polished the flint and lit the fuse. Fireworks soared into the sky, and the captain turned to his subordinates and shouted. Continue searching. Be sure to find more traces and wait for backup to arrive so they can determine the target location. In this way, Marcus Breno successfully delayed the pursuers. He galloped on horseback, climbed over mountains and ridges, waded through water to eliminate the smell, and went back and forth for a whole day, but he was actually not caught up by the pursuers. However, he gradually couldn't hold it any longer. My forehead is hot. Difficulty breathing. All the dry food he carried was eaten. The few cavalrymen he killed had some black bread with them, but when he took a bite, his gums and jaws were in burning pain. I barely swallowed half of the piece, and after a while, I vomited it all out. Is there any place where he can rest for a while? Marcus lay on the ridge and looked down. At the foot of the mountain in the dusk, a wisp of smoke rises, and there is a small village located here. Outside the village, streams of mountain streams flow out of the canyon and merge into an oblong lake with a slight turn. A small island rises in the middle of the lake, with lush vegetation. From a distance, it looks like an open eye. Marcus perked up. That small island, that eye-shaped lake, he had seen it on the map before setting off, and it had the Holy Sea's teleportation array on it. As long as he can get here, his mission will be at least half accomplished. He observed the way down the mountain for a moment, then dismounted and turned the horse's head. After patting the horse's butt, the horse neighed and ran for a few steps before standing still blankly. Marcus was cruel and pulled out his dagger and stabbed the horse in the butt. The horse was frightened and immediately galloped away along the mountain road. The horse's hooves hit it, and in a moment, it was already so far away that it couldn't be heard. Then, the thief turned around and cut through the thorns and thorns along the steep hillside without roads, sprinting all the way towards the village. He was originally a level 8 thief. Even though he suffered a series of injuries and his strength was weakened and weakened again, he was still much stronger than ordinary people. The hillside was overgrown with vegetation, making it impossible for ordinary mountain residents to walk, but it didn't hinder him much. In a moment, covered with grass, leaves and dust, he stood at the foot of the mountain and looked at the village from a distance. It gets darkest in the valley. Often there is still the afterglow on the mountain ridge, but once we reach the valley, it is almost so dark that we can hardly see the vegetation on the roadside. Marcus followed his memory and walked outside. Within a moment, he saw a dozen houses in the small village, with flickering lights and the faint aroma of food wafting in the wind. Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to kill someone for no reason. He didn't go straight in. He just walked around carefully along the fence at the entrance of the village, hoping to steal some food. After walking dozens of steps, the sparkling water in front of me was a reservoir dug by the villagers. The sound of the gurgling spring reached his ears, and Marcus suddenly felt his throat was thirsty. He leaned on the edge of the pool and stretched out his hand to drink the water. After only 3 or 4 sips, I felt an uncomfortable feeling in my chest and abdomen again, and it was overwhelming. Marcus tried his best to turn his head, but it was too late. With a whoosh, the tumbling contents in his stomach spurted out from his mouth and nose. There were strands floating in the water, and I don't know if they were dry food eaten during the day or something else. Marcus lay on the edge of the pool, vomiting until he was exhausted and covered in cold sweat. His throat was burning and painful, mixed with the sour taste in his mouth. With great difficulty, he raised his body, moved a few steps to the side, and picked up the clear spring to rinse his mouth. After washing for a few times, there was a movement not far away, and a very delicate and soft exclamation sounded. "Ah! Who?" Marcus reflexively rolled to the side, his right hand reaching to his waist, holding the dagger tightly. He pressed his left hand on the ground, shrank and bounced his body, and rushed out with the sound, the dagger already half unsheathed. However, the person who screamed in surprise about 10 steps away was a little girl, at most 5 or 6 years old. Her feet were bare, her denim coat was in tatters, and the edges were hanging down bit by bit. She had bright red hair and a pair of crystal clear eyes. She looked at him with an expression full of curiosity and concern, without any trace of disdain or disgust. Marcus' hands softened. This little girl, this red hair, these watery eyes, are exactly like his little Maria. Little Maria looked so innocent and cute before she was taken away by the Holy See for training. He hasn't seen his daughter for 7 years. You. Marcus couldn't help but soften his voice. The little girl had already ran up to him and looked up at him. "Uncle, are you feeling uncomfortable? Do you want to vomit? I happened to pick some fruits. The sour fruits are the most pleasant to eat, and you won't want to vomit soon." She raised her hands. A bunch of blackberries, with branches and leaves, was held in front of Marcus by her. "Yes, the same is true for little Maria, she has the best heart." Marcus tremblingly took the handful of berries. He picked one up and put it in his mouth. He didn't know what it tasted like, so he swallowed it with his saliva. His chest didn't seem to be so sad anymore. He stretched out his hand to wash in the pool water, shook off the water, and touched the top of the little girl's hair. "Little girl, thank you very much. Uncle still has something to do and has to go on his way. Don't tell anyone that you have seen me." As he spoke, he dug into his pocket and took out a small handful of coins and stuffed them into the girl's palm. He stretched out his hand and squeezed her small palm together with the coins. He closed his fingers around the girl's delicate fist, felt the temperature of his palm for a moment, and then let go. "I am leaving." He turned around, jumped over the pool, and continued running. The stream gurgled and flowed out of the canyon. Marcus's figure in black went down the water. After a while, he was no longer visible. Wangshan is a dead horse. Looking down from the mountain ridge, from the small village to the exit of the canyon and then to the eye-shaped lake, it doesn't seem to be that far away. But Marcus ran as hard as he could, until he was dizzy, his chest was on fire, and the mouth of the canyon was still far ahead. Just as he was about to take a break, there was a scream behind him, and a bright yellow firework rose in the direction of the village. "Damn it! The pursuers are here again." Marcus touched his arms, took out the last acceleration charm, and broke it with all his strength. A breeze lingered around him, and Marcus' feet suddenly became much faster. He rushed out of the canyon in one breath, identified the direction, and rushed towards the lake on the right. There was silence by the lake. Marcus searched around and found no boats, not even a tree trunk that could be used as a canoe. Marcus gritted his teeth, took off his boots, tied them around his waist, and got into the water again. There was a splash of water, and 7 or 8 wild ducks were frightened by him and flew up, flapping their wings and quacking loudly, and flew into the night sky. "Over there! There's movement over there!" someone shouted in the distance. Marcus no longer had the strength to conceal his whereabouts, so he could only lower his head and paddle hard. The lake water was a bit colder than the stream late at night. Marcus' teeth were chattering, and when he stepped onto the shore, he almost fell to the ground. He didn't even have time to empty out a small fish in his boots, struggled to put on his leather boots, staggered, and ran towards the center of the island. Dash into the woods. Over the bush. He got into a wooden house that was about to collapse, lifted up the iron plate under the bed of the wooden house, and got into the tunnel. Climbing to the end of the tunnel, in the earth cave, under the silent illumination of the eternal flame, a rock slab lay quietly. The groove in the center of the rock slab is about 1 foot square, with a round hole drilled around it and a gem the size of a broad bean inlaid. Red, yellow, green, blue, distinct colors. Marcus breathed a sigh of relief, took out the 3 glass tubes that had been hidden in his arms, and gently unwrapped them. Observing carefully under the light, the glass tube is no longer as crystal clear as before. Instead, it is a bit hazy, and there are dots of things growing inside. Could it be that this treasure must be placed in ice? Will it go bad easily after being taken out? Then you have to teleport back quickly. If it's later, it'll spoil and become unusable, and he won't be able to get points. Marcus carefully placed the glass tube in the groove. Take a deep breath and press the gems in order of up, down, left, and right. The 4 gems flashed, the brilliance flowed on the rock board, and the crisscrossing lines lit up one by one. There is a tunnel here. Hurry up. There were shouts in the distance outside the tunnel. Marcus held the dagger tightly and stared at the light on the rock slab without looking back. Move quickly, charge quickly, teleport things away. Hurry. Has this teleportation array not been maintained for too long? It's not powerful enough. Found it? There's someone ahead. There was a cacophony of footsteps. There's still a little bit left, work harder. People in front, listen. You are blocked. You can't escape. Quickly put down your weapons and surrender, hand over what you stole, and spare your life. Still not enough. The grooves on the rock slab were not completely lit up, and were still less than 10% bright. Moreover, they were no longer moving. What is the solution? Is there anything else that can be used, magic, holy power, or something else? Those in front, surrender immediately. More heavy iron boots came. Marcus quickly turned around. The tunnel was shining brightly, but the pursuers were holding 7 or 8 spears, and they were so densely packed that they almost blocked the exit of the tunnel. The gunblade reflected silver light, and for a moment, it stung him so much that he almost closed his eyes. There is no hope, there is no possibility of escape. Marcus turned sharply and dropped to his knees. He raised his head and glanced at the roof of the earthen house, held the dagger in both hands, and stabbed it into his heart. For the Lord of Glory. Blood spurted. The blood in my heart spilled onto the stone slab, and the last groove was finally completely filled with light. Buzz. When the pursuers arrived and dragged Marcus's body away from the stone slab, the 3 glass test tubes had disappeared without a trace, not even a trace of glass shards were visible. At this time, Gretel had just raised the gate of the buffer zone and walked out of the red zone. Thanks to Lukipa for the reward of 100 starting coins. Today's growth is so bleak, and it looks like it's at an all-time low again. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 240. Ouch, I'm so exhausted. Gretel staggered to the ground. 7 or 8 rooms, the entire red zone. He took care of it all by himself. Pour the disinfectant water one ladle after another. Bucket after bucket. The recording room and material preparation room were a little better. The pollution was not serious. At best, the thief had searched around. The anatomy room was okay, but the strain culture room, he completely passed it inch by inch. Ceiling. Floor. Wall. Broken petri dishes should be put into a sharps container according to medical waste standards. Sorry, there is no such thing, only a large ceramic jar, and then melted over a white fire. Until now, he has never done such heavy physical work. It's not finished until everything is cleaned up. The next step is to take samples from the whole house and conduct bacterial culture experiments. I also placed dozens of petri dishes in the laboratory, opened and closed the lids one by one, and conducted sedimentation bacteria tests. Those great magicians were watching the fun with their hands folded, but no one was willing to help him. The necromancer was still following him step by step. Whenever Gretel did something new, he would take a look and ask, "Why are you pouring it on the roof? Why are you still spreading it out of thin air? What are you cooking? Broth. You're welcome, we won't eat it." "What? Isn't it for us to eat? It's so boring. Can you take off your protective clothing?" "No." "Can you go out?" "Nothing, nothing." "Hey, what are you doing? The lid is still open. It's back to cover again, wouldn't it be better to just cover it just now?" "Gretel. I have time to ask questions, but you can help me a little bit." After finally confirming that the whole house was cleaned, Gretel collapsed on the ground when he returned to the cleaning area. The back collar suddenly tightened, and he was picked up by one hand and spun around on the spot. Greet's brain was still dizzy, and he had been placed on the chair. He raised his hands and feet to assume a pose that required the least effort. Looking sideways, I saw that the hand holding him had no muscles, no skin, not even joints and ligaments. It looked like a bone hand. Seeing him looking over, the skeleton collapsed on the spot with a crash, collapsed, and stretched out a bone hand to pick up his own bones, picked up the skull and put it on the at the top, try not to take up space. Looking at the necromancer again, the black-robed great magician turned his head as if nothing had happened, pretending that the skeleton was not summoned by him. "Gretel. Thank you. Why are you doing this, Seeing him paralyzed and not wanting to move his fingers, the two great magicians of the plasticity department felt distressed and couldn't help laughing. The white-robed mage from the protection department added, "You still have to wear that dress, why bother? Just put it on and take it off, take a shower outside, it will waste at least an hour." "Look at your puppet," Greet replied weakly, taking advantage of the teacher's presence. The white-robed mage raised his eyebrows, and beside him, two metal dolls were swaying towards their master. He immediately came over and observed up and down with the two great magicians of the conjuration department and the prophecy department. The two dolls were originally exactly the same, but after walking around in the danger zone, there were some differences. The one wearing protective clothing had a layer of water vapor on its body, and the one without protective clothing and relying purely on magic had some wet disinfectant on its feet. To the naked eye, there was no damage to either of them. The conjuration magician fiddled with the spells, making a circle with the thumb and index finger of his right hand, and looked at his puppet through the circle. Before he could see anything, the black-robed necromancer had already come over and reached out to touch the one without protective clothing. As soon as I touched it, my eyes suddenly lit up. "Give this one to me, I'll pay double the price." "No. No." Two voices screamed simultaneously. One was Greed. When he sprayed the disinfectant, he deliberately missed the one without protective clothing. The other was the great magician from the prophecy department. His eyes were wide open and his fingers were no worse than last night. "This one is very dangerous. Very dangerous." "Where is the danger?" The white-robed mage was still arrogant. Greed had jumped off the chair and staggered over. With a petri dish in one hand and a cotton swab in the other, I raised my hand to smear it on the puppet. "I can't give it to you. If I give it to you, I'll get into trouble. You should clearly see the danger." As he spoke, he applied a few smears on the doll's face, chest, legs, and arms. "Apply one line, draw a line in the petri dish with your backhand, change the cotton swab and apply again. After wiping everything, cover the lid and point to the petri dish. Give birth." Misty green light spilled out. In the petri dish, on the translucent agar medium, plagues suddenly appeared one by one and in clusters. Except for the first scratch on the face, colonies of bacteria grew densely on the other scratches. He replaced another puppet wearing protective clothing, which was exactly the same, and operated it again. If the magic of birth promoting is thrown up, at least no one can see any spots with the naked eye. The conjuration magician observed for a long time through the circle between his thumb and index finger, and then mumbled in doubt. "I seem to have seen a little bit." "You can see it better with a microscope," Greet replied softly. Before the other party could ask what a microscope was, the protection mage in white robe had already asked. "You used the birthing spell yourself. Could it be that the magic power on both sides is unbalanced and the amount of birthing is different?" Gretel smiled slightly. He touched the space bag, took out two other sets of petri dishes and cotton swabs, and handed them over with both hands. "You make sense. I also suggest doing another set of experiments. This time, we don't use magic to induce growth. Let the petri dish stand for 24 hours to see the growth of the colony. You can try it yourself, and I want to do it myself. Make another set." He handed the experimental equipment forward. Before the white-robed mage could respond, the previously disintegrated skeleton staggered over and took the petri dish. Greet bowed slightly, stood up straight, and turned around to get busy again. The great magician of the protection department was hesitant, but he took over the experimental equipment and started doing it himself. Greet and him took samples one after another, then bowed their heads and saluted. "Sorry, I have to disinfect this puppet and the path it has taken, Bernard. Come here and help me pour disinfectant. And Master Dash." He turned to the necromancer who was rummaging around for a curette, trying to scrape the ashes off his fingers and take them back. "You just touched this doll. Please wash your hands immediately, immediately. The necromancer shrugged his shoulders and ran to wash his hands obediently under Gretel's strict surveillance. While washing, he turned his head frequently and looked at the alchemy doll that was being splashed with disinfectant. His face looked like he was mourning for his heir. No, it was a loss of 100 million, or a bone dragon. After watching the alchemy dolls being disinfected with his own eyes, Gretel finally relaxed. He fell down on the chair and gave vague instructions. Oro, you go and keep an eye on the search team. The intruder will be disinfected wherever he passes. Before he finished speaking, his head tilted and he fell asleep on the spot. I slept until daylight. In a daze, a familiar voice seemed to call him. Gretel! Get up! The man is caught. Don't disturb me, let me sleep. Greet grunted and rolled over. The man persisted and continued to push him. Get up! The person has been found, but the things are gone. The great magician is looking for you. If it's gone, it's gone. Greet got under the quilt, but still couldn't resist the noise, so he simply pulled up the quilt and covered his head. Beside his bed, Aurora Wharton was ready to try again, but Bernard snatched it away. The barbarian made a silence gesture, remained silent for a moment, and became angry. Help people! Where? Greet jumped up with a bang. You need to wake up to receive the information. Greet jumped out of bed, washed his face and brushed his teeth, and listened to Aurora's report. The intruder was indeed found, but was already dead. The 3 stolen test tubes were missing. A teleportation circle was found under the intruder, and it was highly suspected that the items had been sent away. The destination of the teleportation array is being analyzed by the great magicians, and the results will be available as soon as tonight. Have you disinfected the deceased? Gretel sprayed out the toothpaste and toothbrush. Aurora quickly comforted him. It's been disinfected. It's been disinfected. The Archmage froze the corpse directly. The teleportation circle and the entire cave and tunnel were washed with disinfectant to ensure there won't be any problems. God knows, since yesterday, no, the night before yesterday, his senior brothers and sisters, and their disciples, have been making disinfectant day and night, and they are almost going crazy. Make distilled water, make refined salt, turn on electricity, collect lime in large bags, collect flammable gas, collect caustic soda. The 4 laboratories are bustling and working at full capacity. The 375th floor of Babel Tower. When have you ever done such rough work? As long as it's been disinfected, Gretel finally breathed a sigh of relief. He hurriedly took care of himself and immediately grabbed Aurora. Where was the deceased caught? Has he been disinfected along the way? Take me there, I want to take samples for analysis. Isn't this necessary? Aurora hesitated. A magician strode over from next door. I'll take him there. Archmage. Aurora immediately lowered her head and saluted. Greet looked outside and saw that His Excellency the Lord of Thunder and other members of the jury had left. Only the black-robed necromancer stuck his head out and refused to leave. Outside the gate, 2 bone horses were kicking their saddles, and saddles were ready. Opposite the necromancer, the member of the jury of the evocation department, whom Archmage Carlyle called Old Sam, was like a shepherd dog guarding against wild wolves, staring at the necromancer every step of the way. The level of blackface is not much different from that of the necromancer's skeleton. Take me. Greet had already started packing her things. He didn't care who took him there, he just threw everything into the space bag. Petri dishes, culture media, microscopes, glass rods that channel magic, and everything else imaginable. By the way, he should also bring the gold coins, as well as the bell containing the gold coins, so that he can do whatever he needs at any time. While that guy was escaping, I had to analyze and take samples to make sure there were no leaks of germs around him. I also have disinfectant and the bleaching powder I asked you to make. Bring as much as you can. 3000 word chapter, another update completed. Thanks to @NoSakura for the 100 starting coins reward. I saw a doctor in Zhengzhou on the news today. He climbed up on the subway and gave people CPR and artificial respiration. He knelt from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m., and his knees were rotten into pieces. I really can't bear for my protagonist to be like this. But there really is such a doctor in reality. T. Salute to all the angels in white. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, please ask for all kinds of